About a third of the Earth's entire landmass is in Asia. With an area of 44.6 million square kilometers, Asia's become the most populated continent on Earth, home to around 4 billion people. While many Asian countries attract countless tourists from all over the world, this continent has always been of especially outstanding importance for archaeology. Thousands of years ago, the first great empires in history arose here, and many traces of that time are still visible today. From time to time, however, researchers in Asia come across artifacts that are not so easy to place in a comprehensible context, and it's precisely such mysterious finds that we'd like to take a close look at with you today. From mysterious structures in the ground to lost kingdoms, here are several extraordinary discoveries from Asia. Before we get started, be sure to hit the like button and ring the notification bell for more videos. Also, stick around until the end to hear about one of the scariest discoveries ever unearthed in Asia. Shimao. When researchers stumbled upon the Shimao fortifications, one thing seemed clear at first. It had to be part of the gigantic Great Wall of China. However, thorough archaeological analysis showed that the site on the southern foothills of the Arose Plateau predates the massive ramparts that were built during the Ming Dynasty. This is how Shimao came into being around 2000 BC. With an area of 400 hectares, it's the largest walled settlement of this era. The structure of Shimao shows how complex coexistence was in the Neolithic age. In addition to a palace complex, living areas, cemeteries, and handicraft workshops were also built here. The jade embedded in the city walls, on the other hand, appears extremely unusual. The gemstones may have served to protect against evil spirits. The 80 human skulls, mostly from young girls, show that ritual sacrifices were regularly performed in Shimao. In all likelihood, the residents had been forced to abandon their homes as a result of drastic climate change. So it happened that the fascinating town slumbered in the desert, forgotten for many centuries. Tarim mummies. At the beginning of the 20th century, archaeologists from Europe came across some desiccated bodies in China's Tarim Basin. Since then, many more Tarim mummies have been recovered and studied scientifically. Some of them are exhibited in museums. However, unlike the mummies of the ancient Egyptians, these remains were mummified by natural drying and were not artificially preserved. The oldest Tarim mummies are almost 4,000 years old and are accompanied by giant question marks. The deceased were remarkably tall during their lifetime and had European facial features and light hair colors. However, East Asian-looking mummies have also been discovered. The origin of the Tarim mummies has not been finally clarified. Genetic analysis indicates that they were members of an indigenous culture that was widespread during the Ice Age. Mysterious dome fields. Technical progress makes it possible. Archaeologists in Cambodia have discovered gigantic structures in the ground by using laser scanners from the air. However, researchers can only speculate about the true origins of these dome-shaped mounds. In fact, during their search for clues, the archaeologists came across many different variants of these inexplicable structures. According to this, around 1,000 years ago, people also built mounds with geometric patterns, for example, in the form of spirals. The fact that the objects probably had a special status is shown by their location. The complexes were always built in the immediate vicinity of temples. Before this exciting discovery, experts had assumed that such temple complexes were sparsely populated. However, the dome panels that have been discovered suggest that urban structures existed around the sanctuaries, suggesting that the site housed a large, steady population. Island of Gold. When archaeological divers went in search of clues in Indonesia, a gigantic treasure spread out before their eyes. Hundreds of figurines, sacred temple bells, ceramic artifacts, tools, and mirrors tumbled about on the muddy river bottom. The historical treasures were complemented by golden sword hilts, ruby-studded gold rings, and flutes shaped like peacocks. The artifacts recovered point to an absolute sensation. Experts may have rediscovered the lost city-state of Srivijaya. Between the 7th and 13th centuries, the kings of Srivijaya held absolute supremacy in the region, but over time, the so-called thalassocracy was attacked and crushed by the warriors of Java. The beating heart of Srivijaya formed the Island of Gold. Today, however, there are virtually no traces of this heyday, save for the sparkling artifacts that divers pulled from the river. According to ancient legends, the magnificent island was home to man-eating snakes, fire-breathing volcanoes, and even Hindi-speaking parrots. However, we know nothing about the everyday life of the residents of that time, neither what clothes they wore nor what food they preferred. Hot Shabib. Rediscovered in 1948, there's still speculation as to what purpose Hot Shabib really served. What is certain is that the enigmatic Wall of Jordan was an incredible 150 kilometers long. However, it's also clear that with a height of just 1 meter, it was by no means suitable as a protective wall. It is possible that Hot Shabib was used to ward off smaller enemies, such as ravenous goats that would have been only too happy to help themselves to the residents' supplies. To the west of the wall, the remains of an old agricultural area were discovered. The wall may have once functioned as a boundary between the farmland and the pastures of nomadic farmers. However, it's uncertain whether this cattle fence theory really corresponded to the reality at the time. The same applies to the other backgrounds. We cannot say with absolute certainty who built the Wall of Hot Shabib and when it was built. The Pyramids in China. The pyramids of China have long been the focus of research in the country. This has a lot to do with the fact that they emerged in different parts of the world every few hundred years without any sign of contact between civilizations. For example, the pyramids in China bear a striking resemblance to the pyramids that can be found in Egypt, South America, and many different continents across the globe. However, all those years ago, it would have been virtually impossible for these civilizations to have shared building plans and knowledge across such a great distance. In China, as well as in South America and Egypt, there are some structures that either have the shape of pyramids or are legitimate pyramids. In Chinese history, they're often determined to be the tombs of great rulers, and some are believed to be connected with narrow labyrinths in between them that have been buried deep underground. The big question to this day is whether the pyramids in China were created through knowledge from Egypt or whether the ancient Chinese discovered this design independently on their own. At the moment, we really don't know, but researchers hope to get to the bottom of this phenomenon very soon. China's oldest sculpture. Around 13,500 years ago, a resident of present-day China decided to sculpt a small bird, thereby unknowingly entering the history books. In fact, the artifact recovered a few years ago is the oldest known figure in China. A small piece of mammoth bone served as the raw material, which was then shaped into the desired shape. This stunning discovery once again provides an opportunity to look at human history in a whole new light. Before this find, experts had assumed that depictions of birds would not find their way into Chinese art until 8,500 years later. Hobbit people. Why the extinct species Homo floresiensis is nicknamed the Hobbit people becomes clear when we take a look at their physical characteristics. Based on the discovered bones, the experts reconstructed that the former inhabitants of the Indonesian island of Flores were just 1 meter tall and weighed between 16 and 30 kilograms. Compared to Homo sapiens, the hobbits also had remarkably large feet. When the small species of the genus Homo was first discovered in 2003, the bone finds were dated to be 18,000 years old. This would have meant that Homo floresiensis lived at a time when the neighboring islands had already been settled by modern humans for thousands of years. However, more recent research suggests that the bones are at least 60,000 years old. It's also unclear what the family background of the dwarf people was. Some researchers believe that this is the result of what is known as island dwarfing. This evolutionary biological phenomenon describes species that continue to shrink over generations on an isolated island without predators. However, other experts consider it more likely that it was a pathologically modified branch of Homo sapiens. Some experts even think it's conceivable that Homo floresiensis did not become extinct at all, so the remaining folk members could still be hiding deep in the heart of the jungle today. Accordingly, sightings of small ape-like figures are repeatedly recorded on the island of Flores. Could it really be Homo floresiensis? What do you think? Feel free to let us know in the comments below. Overbear. While it wasn't technically discovered inside the boundaries of Asia, this legendary sword is believed to have originated from ancient Asia and was found in more recent years, believed to be more than 1,000 years old by today's standards. The Overbear isn't one sword in particular. Rather, it's an inscription that has been found on more than 170 swords that were used by Vikings many years ago. These swords are incredibly impressive and prove how far the Vikings had come in their few years to have wandered the earth. Their blacksmith abilities are unsurpassed, and these swords remain some of the most powerful swords in existence. The swords were found all across trade routes throughout Europe and are believed to have been created between the years 800 and 1000. They were so incredibly well made that many people claim they were hundreds of years ahead of their time. They were each made from cast steel, which means their carbon content is at least 3 times higher than other swords from this area. This made them incredibly strong and durable, and was, by all means, light years ahead of the competition. According to some historians, these swords were so strong and powerful that it would take humanity another 800 years before an equivalent sword would be made. This meant that whatever the Vikings were doing to create these swords, they had some sort of advanced knowledge that other blacksmiths were unaware of. Swords like this would only be created again once the Industrial Revolution was in full swing. The swords were originally believed to have come from the Middle East or certain areas of Asia, but when researchers took a closer look, they found that all the materials that were used came from Central Europe. The only explanation that experts have come to is that the Vikings traveled to Asia or the Middle East and learned advanced blacksmith techniques. They then brought this information back with them and created these legendary swords using materials that could only be found in their homeland. This story is believed because a trade route existed that would connect the Vikings directly to the Middle East. The swords only began to pop up when this route was established. After the route eventually faded away, the swords were no longer being produced. If the Vikings weren't terrifying enough, it seems like they had some sort of otherworldly knowledge about how to make some seriously impressive swords. These Vikings are getting scarier by the day. Shin Zi. It's 1971 when some Chinese soldiers stumble upon a strange tomb in the Mawangdui archaeological site. Thus, the final resting place was in the shape of an inverted pyramid. The real sensation was slumbering 12 meters underground. Shin Zi's body was hidden under 5 tons of charcoal and a meter-thick layer of clay. The noblewoman died around 160 BC and was one of the highest-ranking members of society during her lifetime. Thus, more than 1,000 items were placed in Shin Zi's tomb, including plentiful stores of food, recipes, utensils, and the sculptures of servants. What's special, however, is the extraordinarily good condition of the body. Shin Zi is one of the best preserved mummies ever. This is due to various factors. Thus, the body of the noble was placed in 4 lacquered coffins, thanks to which it was well protected from air and bacteria. The innermost coffin contained 80 liters of an unknown liquid, which was probably also used for preservation. An autopsy of the more than 2,000-year-old corpse even found blood in her veins, and the well-preserved organs gave the impression that Shin Zi had passed away recently. In addition, the experts managed to clarify the cause of death. The Chinese woman was overweight and had severely constricted coronary arteries. Shortly before her death, she ate hard-to-digest food, after which gallstones dissolved. Unfortunately, one of them got stuck in the opening of the bile duct. A combination of severe pain, a weakened heart, and a circulatory collapse ultimately sealed the fate of the approximately 50-year-old. Alright folks, now it's your turn. Which discoveries surprised you the most? As always, let us know your thoughts, suggestions, and feedback on today's video in the comments below. Also, while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to stay up to date from now on. Finally, please take a look at the other videos of our channel, which we've linked for you here in the credits. Thank you for watching, have a good one, and see you next time.